All right, so we're sitting here with Haven. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
All the way down here in I'm doing great, thank you. All the way down here in lovely Los Angeles. Beautiful spot, man. How long you been out here?
About 12 years. I moved out here in around 2009 or 2010 with a squad of us.
Really?
A squad of us moved out here, and we had like the typical like big city dream. We were we were all trying to make it at music at that time.
Yeah.
So it's me, Big Wino, from the other half of Illfluent.
Right.
You know them, or you know us.
Yeah.
My brother Tim, and our friend Alex, aka Truth the Dead Poet, who's another MC. So
wow.
we all came out here to try to make it at music. And one by one, circumstances came up for everybody, and people kind of eventually, when things get tough, got to go back to where you're from. Usually, I never did that. Like I toughed it out for like a few years, and while I was trying to make it at music, I remember I didn't like how the music industry felt, like the business side of it. So I started doing art on the side just to make side cash, and I just realized something I should have realized years earlier. I was like, wait, I should just focus on that.
That's where it's at for you?
That's where it's at for me. It's not like I had to choose one or the other, but music kind of went back burner and art came to the forefront, and that's when I started surviving out here.
And you came from Grand Junction, yeah?
Yeah, I was born in Pueblo, Colorado. I was forced to move to Grand Junction because one of the first art forms I got involved in was graffiti, like just bombing. I used to just love going bombing when I was in high school. And I was a knucklehead about it. I would do it during the day. I was addicted to it. So I didn't half the time I would plan it and go out at night, but then half the time I would just I thought I was like untouchable or something. I would just tag in the middle of the day on things. And I got caught a few times. And I got put on probation and did all the normal disciplinary things that come your way when you get caught for something.
Right.
And then I got caught for something bigger where I was painting trains in the middle of the day, like an idiot. And I had already had previous charges, so they wanted to make an example out of somebody. So I happened to be one of the people, they put me in jail for like 6 months for graffiti.
And were you doing this when you were in Pueblo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I basically
6 months. Were you a juvenile?
No, this is right when I turned 18.
Oh man.
But when I was 17, I got the one that was before that. I got caught doing graffiti like at high school or something. And I had to go to disciplinary boot camp, where you have to it's like ran by there's drill instructors that are former military people, and you're that's how they discipline you, I guess.
They break you down to build you back up. Is what
like every day you're up
right?
at 5 a.m. They're like in your face yelling at you. It was a shocker. But when I got out of there, they wouldn't let me go to any school district in Pueblo. I was like blacklisted from Pueblo.
Wow.
So my mom lived in Grand Junction, so they kind of basically deported me. So I ended up in Grand Junction, and there wasn't as much of that out there. So we were like some of the only people out there doing like graffiti, breakdancing, rapping, and all that.
Right.
There was a couple of people, but I'm not gonna say we started it there, but it was this town didn't have any type of scene, or whatever you want to call it, and we started throwing an event called Skill Fest way back in the year 2000, 2001.
Yep.
And surprisingly, people showed up to that, and we're like, oh, there are people out in this town. And we thought it was just a cowboy,
Right.
But people showed up to the jam, and then we started doing it every year. We did it 4 years, and that was the long answer, but yeah.
Well, Skill Fest grew from, I don't know which Skill Fest. I went to several of them back in the day in Grand Junction.
Did you?
And I remember one of them was in a building, maybe on Main Street. I remember you guys had B-Boy, Rap Battle, and you guys didn't, at that point, you didn't have the graffiti aspect of it yet. But as it got bigger, I remember the last one that I went to was, you set it up at the college.
Oh, yeah. That was the best one.
Yeah.
One of the best ones.
I don't know, was that the last one?
My favorite one was at the Lincoln Park Barn.
Okay.
We put out a DVD of it and everything.
Okay.
Were you ever in the rap battles?
I was.
You did, yeah.
I was in probably one of the first or the second one.
Yeah, your whole crew used to come out, and I remember you guys, and that was dope. It was cool because it showed that was a hip hop my brother called it a hip hop watering hole.
Nice.
Because like everybody that was out there that was like thirsty for their there's these little towns around there. Like there's people coming from like Carbondale.
Yeah.
Like good b-boys too.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be surprised, or some MC from like some little mountain town will come down and like do good in the battle.
Right.
And it's cool because like there's still people that met at that jam to this day that are like
still connected.
Yeah, they're doing business together, and we're all older now. So
well, I think we're kind of a testimony to that too, because I met you in those early days, and look at now in 2021, we're sitting here having a conversation in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't want to grow up.
Neither do I. So your pops lived in Pueblo and your mom lived in Junction, and Tim is your brother?
Tim.
Is he still back in Junction? Is he back in Junction?
Yeah, the OG.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so you ended up in Grand Junction, and where did you link up with Wino?
Okay, I met Wino, my brother Tim and Wino met at a hip hop house party. This was actually the first hip hop jam in the Western Slope, I think. Okay. It was a house party, and they put together like a flyer and everything, and like they put like the invitation was like backyard boogie, like written in like some like tag, like some graffiti hand style, and they were like freestyling at the party, and Wino met him, and he's like, "Oh, you rap? My brother raps." And then Timmy introduced me to Wino, and I never took rapping as like as something like, "Oh, you should go be a recording artist," but Wino. I actually give credit to Wino because he's the first one that got me in the studio.
Really? He's
like, "You're good, man. Let's go. You should go record a verse and let's make a song." And we like wrote like a verse each verse, right? And we went to our friend's studio. He used to go by Evolve at Osmo. Yeah. You know him?
I remember the name. From the Skillfest days.
Yeah. So he's the first person that ever let me record. So shout out to him too. And we ended up doing that for a while. We ended up putting out like an album. That was pretty cool. I was like, I never thought I'd do something like that, but it's a small town, so that album got like a little bit of a buzz, and we ended up getting on the radio out there. Nice. We got some songs on Magic FM, and they even, back when CDs used to sell, like Hastings, and the record shops locally would actually we were like in the store like next to 50 Cent and all that. It was pretty cool. It was a cool little time.
You guys were doing it, man. You guys were making some noise.
It seemed that way,
Yeah, it really did. So you guys did, you and Wino. Where's Wino at now? Is he in Oregon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's doing good.
Yeah, that Junction scene, you guys really opened up, I think, for a lot of young people, young artists, an opportunity to express, not just through rap music, but through all the aspects of hip hop, for sure. So you got to LA, and you got here about, what'd you say, 2010-ish?
Yeah, 2010, roughly. Yeah.
So how long until did it take for you to say, all right, I'm gonna get more into my art, aside from rapping?
Yeah. Like, well, I was doing it right away because I've never liked jobs. So like, we were all out here, and we just like, everybody had to come up with their part of the rent, right? So when the first of the month was approaching, everybody's like, look at each other, where's your 500? Where's your 500? And like, I went and applied for a couple jobs, but jobs have never been for me. So I started looking on Craigslist. Okay. And a lot of people hear that and they go, Craigslist, oh, don't deal with anything. Craigslist, artists, one of the main things I always tell them, when they go, well, they can't figure out how to make a living at art. Start with things like that, and if you do it a couple hours a day where you respond to people's ads, or if you put up your own ads in places like Craigslist, you'll find little gigs.
So how did you do that? Were you a caricature artist then, or did you develop that later?
I was like a wannabe caricature artist.
Okay.
And I'm still developing, but like back then, I seen it, and I knew what that was, and I thought I understood it. You know, I was like, oh, make it funny.
All right.
But I was basically just doing kind of like cartoon portraits of people with big heads.
Right.
I didn't understand like the nuances of like really pulling exaggeration or making it funny.
Finding their feature and saying, okay, we're going to really capitalize on that feature. That's what it seems like. I don't know very much about it, but
generally, yeah,
because
like it's not as simple. Like one of the main things people walk up and say is like, oh, he's going to make your nose big, but some people don't have a big nose, and it's not just about size.
Right.
It's about proportion between them, and like even like the subtle way that someone looks to the side. Like someone might look at their wife in a certain way, and if you could capture that and maybe even twist it a little bit and exaggerate even the way they sit or the way they smirk.
Right.
And the more hours you put in doing it, the more you pick up on those things.
Just
especially if you're on
like any art form, right?
Yeah, and I
you develop that eye. You've developed the eye. So when you're just like on the bus or you're like in town, when you see somebody, or you're like, oh man.
Right now I'm doing that.
Yeah.
You're always looking at people like just going, oh.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. It's distracting, huh? So you've met a lot of people doing caricatures. I've seen. You know, you do these certain events. Let's go, before I get into that, let's go back into like using Craigslist or getting those gigs. Because there's a lot of artists out there are like, yo, I love art. I don't know how to make a living doing it.
Right.
There's an aspect that's hard for artists to do, because a lot of artists are either artists, and if they're not artists, then they lack this business aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
How to get money. Getting money is business, art is art, and usually they're kind of exclusive of each other.
Yep.
So when you're able to merge the two, then you can start to get your hustle, and then you get paid for doing your art. Using Craigslist, how were you able to do that?
Okay, like there's a lot of pieces of advice I could give, but generally I'd like to like go in this direction with this answer. Is when you're an artist, you can't just be stubborn and just do only your little lane of like what you're sticking to your comfort zone forever will keep you limited to that one little demographic of whatever it is. If you're a graffiti artist, that's cool if you're dope at graffiti, but if someone comes to you and says, could you draw my granddaughter? Try to say yes as much as possible. Like, say, you don't have to say yes, it's gonna be the greatest portrait you've ever seen, but say, I'll give it a shot, and then give it a shot. And if you're not comfortable with how good you are at a particular thing, maybe do it for free the first couple times just to get it's like training wheels, or give a cheap price. And then once you do that a few times, you realize, oh, it doesn't mean you're gonna pick it up right away, but you might be like, oh, now I'm kind of decent at drawing people.
Right.
Whereas you used to avoid it because you want to stick to your lane so much.
Right.
And the reason I started doing that was because I was forced to do that, because I was out here and I was like, I gotta make a living, and people would come to me and they'd ask me if I did things that I didn't do. But instead of saying no, I would just like fake it till you make it type thing. I was like, yeah. And one of the biggest times I've ever done that was with I was drawing caricatures, and a representative for Michael Kors, the fashion designer, was in my line. And he was like one of these, like, he was kind of a dick, honestly. But he's just like, he goes, hey man, he goes, I don't got time to wait with all these people, but give me your card. And I was like, I was in the middle of drawing something, and I kind of was just like, wait your turn, sir. He goes, trust me, he goes, I'm gonna make you some money. Give me your card. He goes, do you do fashion sketches? And I just looked, and he looked like a legit guy. I was like, yeah. I said, yeah. Next thing you know, within that week, I was talking with like the execs of his company. Beautiful. They're like, okay, can you come out to New York for this fashion thing? You're gonna be drawing fashion illustrations. So while it was kind of like, I was really rushed into it, I was grateful for it because I got put like right into like a fashion event, and it showed me like, oh, well, you could adapt and figure something out on the fly. And
so sometimes that sink or swim.
It
requires you to put your game on a higher level, right?
Yeah. Okay. And when you
That's somebody got a loud cell phone ring, man.
But yeah, that was just one example of it though. There was like plenty other things. Like people are like, do you do this? Do you do that? And I just kept trying to say yeah. And I had a few clients early on that they were like, this is not what I wanted, and I was just like, well, maybe give them their money back or whatever. But I gained that experience.
Yeah.
And you can't. It's like, it sounds cliche, but you can't be afraid to fail at things.
Right.
And just keep doing it.
Cool.
Keep doing it and get well-rounded.
Yeah.
Get well-rounded. Don't like if there's a style. Like I remember in college we even had to do this. They said pick an artist that has a style that's not like yours and then copy it. And I picked Egon Schiele. And it looked easy to me. I was like, oh, Egon Schiele, this guy has like a sloppy painting style. Then I did it, and I was like, oh wait, what he does is, I learned something.
Yeah.
And no, I still carry that with me today. If someone asked me today, could you do an Egon Schiele style painting? I'd be more comfortable being like, yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I like that idea. It's bravery, man. You know, me doing jewelry, I get put in that position all the time. Hey, can you do this? Like, I've never done that before, but I'm not going to tell them. I say, yeah, I can do it, and I will figure it out.
Yeah.
It just forces you to figure it out. And then at the end, you're like, I'm so glad that I did that, because it actually expanded me and took me to a different place that I wouldn't have outside my comfort zone. It took me to a place that I needed to go and I didn't even know it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like your jewelry, let's go in that direction. Like, I'm sure when you started out, you're probably doing things you like, maybe, right? Like a microphone or whatever.
Right.
But you did this logo. This logo is complex.
Right.
Like, if you look at this logo, or the Bronco logo, I've seen you've done the Bronco logo, right? Like, that's not a logo that would be fun to do with metalwork. Right. But you just chose to say, I could do that for you.
Yep.
And then you got better through taking on that challenge.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're sitting there scratching your head like, man, how am I going to pull this off? And then it forces you to go there. And then once you go there, you're like, all right. And then it makes you a little bit more confident the next time someone says, hey, can you do? Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And that confidence doesn't come overnight, right? And that's what I try to tell people. They're like, oh, well, I can't do that. I'm like, well, just start doing it, and if you really like it, you'll.
There's a difference between I can't and I won't.
Yeah.
And they're not far between. So with your caricatures, you've been around. You've been doing a lot of. I've seen you just at events, and you do. I'm sure you've met a lot of like really interesting people. What have you met some? I don't know. Here in LA, you would assume you probably run into some pretty big names. Let's talk about that.
Well, you see famous people around, and one thing I've never done is like approach famous people because they're famous. Right. But if I'm at an event and I see that if Mike Tyson's at the event and I'm early, I'm gonna go, oh well, let me just draw Mike Tyson real quick because that'd be a cool promo to get, right? And then you just walk up to him and check it out. But as far as like somebody just happened to land in my chair, probably the most famous is the singer Brandy.
Wow.
It was her daughter's party, but I was like, oh wow, this is Brandy, this is cool. And she was real nice and her caricature. I was pretty nervous for that one, but she liked it. And I've done a lot of UFC fighters.
How did you get linked into? Because I noticed you do a lot of that. How did you get linked into the UFC?
Well, the UFC thing is like, whenever you're not doing live events or you got to stay sharp. Even anybody, no matter what you do, you got to stay practicing, right? So, especially during pandemic, like I wasn't doing events for several weekends in a row. And I was getting rusty, so I try to practice by drawing things that I'm into, right? So like, if there's a fighter has a fight coming up, I'll just practice by drawing them. And I started getting better at it, and I was like, oh wait, I could actually use this to promote myself. So then I'd either tag them on Instagram, or if an event was coming to LA, I would look at the fight card and go, who's gonna be on this fight card? Let me draw some of my favorite fighters on this fight card. And I know some people that work at the UFC, so I'd say, hey man, I got these drawings for this fighter, this fighter, and this fighter. I'd like to put it in their hands. And they kind of give me like, oh, you're gonna be here for the press conference, so yeah, if you're around that day, let me know. And I just show up and have my stuff ready. And once they see it, you don't have to approach them, they approach you. Right. You know what I mean?
Like, oh, hell no, whoa!
Yeah, like you could be across the room, and if I have and I draw big too, like I don't draw like little ones, I draw, like if it's Jorge Masvidal, I'll be like, boom, and he'll be like, oh, and then you...
That just creates that dialogue.
Yeah, it feels good too. It's like, it feels good to like, whether they're famous or not, when you show somebody a drawing of them, to see like,
them light up.
React, it's cool.
So have you created some relationships with some fighters or within the UFC, like I don't know, promoters or?
Yeah, I've done a lot of the sports world, a lot of their marketing and their logos, like especially podcasts. They all get characters, and I did like the first one I did was for Sean O'Malley. I met him when he was in LA. Do you know who Sugar Sean O'Malley is?
I don't.
He's a fighter. He's a pretty big name right now. He asked me. I was in the elevator with him. He goes, "Could you do my caricature for my podcast?" Me and my buddy Tim Welch. I was like, "Yeah." I did their logo for it, and then through that, other people seeing it, and now Instagram usually, but famous fighters and coaches will contact me and go, "Could you do my podcast?" And my podcast character, and at that point, charge a fee because you've already seen my work. So at that point, I could charge. Jorge Masvidal, I consider a friend of ours now at this point. Done several pieces for him and of him. probably my favorite fighter of all time right there. So it was super dope to meet him.
Yeah.
And it was cool because when I was meeting him, he already followed me on Instagram years ago.
Really?
He couldn't put a face with the name, and I was meeting him with his caricature, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool, man." And right at that moment, my buddy walked up, Jose, who also works for the UFC, and he goes, "Oh, hey, you know Haven?" And then we're like, "Oh," and he's like, "Oh yeah." He goes, "I know from Instagram." I'm like, yeah. He goes, "Oh." And since then we've been in touch. So that's been probably my favorite relationship I built.
Nice.
With him. Yeah.
Nice, fruitful. Cool, man.
So I can't name like my favorite artists or whatever, but I can name my favorite fighter easy. Jorge Masvidal, #1.
Is he LA?
No, Miami.
Is he Miami?
Yeah.
Wow. Cool, dude. That's pretty badass, man. Being able to get in. So once you get to the place, do they let you say, all right, you can set up here, or could you draw while you're there, or
yeah.
do you just go and you set up and then that kind of creates its own little like sub experience within that experience of being at the fight or being at the event?
Yeah, like usually like let's say there's a main event, like it's Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic, right? Mm-hmm. I'll have that one drawn ahead of time, and we're mostly done, and I'll just have that with me, working on it because it kind of draws people to you. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like next thing you know, like fighters are kind of checking out, like, oh, that's a DC, or that's a Chuck Liddell, or whoever it may be. And a lot of them have sat down right in front of me and got drawn. One time I was doing that in this magazine called The Athletic. He seen what was going on. He goes, "Can I do an interview with you for online magazine?" And so he was interviewing me while I was drawing fighters. And that was at the one in Anaheim. Yeah.
Was that video?
There's not a video of it, but it's
that's a print interview.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I still have it, so I can link you with it.
Right on, man. I'd like to check that out. Cool, dude. That's badass that you were able to come here and find a way to make art pay, because that's not easy for a lot of cats to do. Let's talk a little bit more about get back into hip hop, because that's one of the places that I know you the most from, and I think it's it's something that's always going to be near and dear to your heart. It's a way of life. It really is. And so hip hop has made some changes in the past 20 years, really. Like, when you grow up listening to hip hop in the 90s, you kind of look at it a certain way, and then the 2000s it kind of made a shift, and then in the 2010s to 2020 it made like another shift. And every like I'll probably say I'm an old head, right? And the young guys will be like, "Oh, you don't understand like what we're doing now." Yeah. How do you feel, or what do you feel how do you feel about the current state of hip hop?
It's complicated because well, first of all, the term hip hop is this very muddy term. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about hip hop, first of all, you have to sort out the definition with the person you're talking with before you can even go further, right?
Okay.
Because some people, when they think of hip hop, I don't know what they picture, but they probably picture like guns shooting and jewelry and some guy with the rainbow colored hair, I don't know, snitching on people. Then other people, like, you could call it old school, you could call it whatever you want, but the true definition of hip hop, the actual culture of hip hop is a culture that came from nothing, and it's making something out of nothing for people that were poor in the inner city. Mm-hmm. That's what hip hop culture is. Right. So when I talk about what hip hop is, that's what I'm referring to. Okay. So as far as hip hop culture has never been stronger, never been more global. And like, when I hear people complain about the state of hip hop, that just tells me that their antennas are tuned into the wrong things. Okay. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there is a lot of whack mainstream hip hop, mainstream rap. People think you're hating on it, but it's just 99.9% trash. It's terrible. Mm-hmm. And that's not hating on, that's not throwing shade, hating, whatever. It's just how I see it. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't change the fact that you don't have to, if you don't like a show that's on TV, you don't have to tune into it and go, I don't agree with how TV is now. You're watching it. Right. Like, you could turn the TV off. And we have, like, the way things are now with the internet, YouTube, SoundCloud, whatever you want to call it, like all these, you could find any music you want to find. If you like real hip hop, find real hip hop, whatever that is to you. Right. So I think hip hop's never been better. Breakdancing, b-boying is in the Olympics now. So hip hop's come a long way, and I used to be one of those people that kind of like talk shit about the state of hip hop, but I kind of come to that realization that I just talked about a minute ago. Like, it's up to me, like what I tune into.
Definitely.
Yeah, change the channel. Like, you don't have to pay attention to stuff that's garbage if it's not for you.
Did you notice a shift? Me being, you know, in the early '90s, you know, going to high school here in Compton, and being kind of a product of, like, I guess, gangster rap.
Yeah.
Because if you rewind a little bit earlier than that, hip hop was a house party. It was fun. It was you know, originally it was, you know, higher infinite power heals our people, right?
Yeah.
So it was empowering. And like you said, it was something that had nothing, and it was something to give a voice to the street, right? And there was so much positive hip hop, whether it was Pan-Africanism or whether it was just like a voice for people that didn't have a voice, for the disenfranchised, if you will. And then it seemed like in the early '90s there was a shift from where you stopped hearing the young MCs, you stopped hearing KRS-One on the level that is, so like we're saying, like how are they feeding us hip hop?
Yeah.
And then you started to see the NWAs come in, and then you started to see like all this like destructive rap. And now some people might say that there was some type of conspiracy in that shift to promote this negative aspect of hip hop for whatever purposes, maybe to destroy people as opposed to build people. Do you subscribe to that, or have you thought about that?
I don't mind getting called a conspiracy theorist. I've been called a conspiracy theorist. It's an ignorant term, honestly. So call it a conspiracy, call it whatever you want. But like, yeah, that's a good pinpoint, kind of like our general, like in the early '90s, corporate interest in rap became huge. It became like the ultimate moneymaker for the music machine. So I think there's a lot of mental warfare that gets, like Guru, the late great Guru from Gangstar used to talk about this. If you're someone in a position of power to put somebody on a pedestal that's going to be a bad influence to millions of people that you want to keep held down, you could do that. You could put somebody that's preaching ignorance in that spot, and you might be paying that guy $1 million, but you're successfully, in your eyes, holding down these people by teaching them that, like, okay, if you make some money, get tons of like pointless jewelry, throw a bunch of stuff on your car, act like a fool, drive drunk, like just all this stuff that's gonna get you. Yeah, it's gonna be self-destructive, right? And that's kind of what I think they were doing. They wanted to hold down the black community, mainly the black community. They wanted to keep, because there is a fear of intelligent minorities coming up in the world. They don't want to see that. So I think that they can easily put intelligent black MCs or Latino MCs in those positions, but that would just empower too many minorities. They don't want that.
Plus the prisons might be a little emptier. Yeah, that's big business too.
Call it a conspiracy, call it what you want. That's just what I think it is.
Yeah.
I think they do have an agenda, and but I think that overall, in the end, I like to believe that like the good side prevails. So it is what it is. If people can't at some point realize that they've been fooled and sold a wolf ticket on all this stuff, then that's a tragedy, honestly. Like if you can't at some point realize, wait, I've been sold on some bullshit for all these years. If you can't realize that, then that's sad.
Well, you know, they say it's easier to fool people than convince them they've been fooled.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just, I think it's you know, it's conversations like this that more people need to have to say, all right, let's look deeper into this and what's really going on, and why are these artists, you don't hear about them, but when you hear their music and you hear how empowering it is, you're not hearing those guys, and then you're hearing this guy who's giving this like total wrong message. And anybody who has kids are like, do I want my kid listening to that, really? But but you see it getting pumped through the radio stations and through media. You're like, oh, something's not right here. Like, if they really care.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that gangster rap or anything, like there's a place for everything. Honestly, there's a time and a place for every type of emotion, or like if you're if you have something that you're pissed about, and the only way you could express it is just by like making a song where it's like really aggressive and pissed and cussing someone out, then if that's what helps you release that, then do that. But it's not. That's not what. I don't think that's what it is 90% of the time. It is an agenda, I think, but
we'll let people decide on their own. But you know, I have to agree with you on that. There's something fishy going on, and you got to be a critical thinker, man. So one aspect of hip hop, so we got the b-boy, we got the graffiti, tagging, and we have MCing. As a connoisseur and as an MC yourself, what would you put on your, if you have 5 faces on your Mount Rushmore of MCs, what would they be? Right?
The top MCs list is something I've never been able to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It can, like, it's impossible. Like I know what people want to hear when they ask that question.
Right.
It could be any. You'll hear a lot of names come up over and over, and you're supposed to say them.
I've asked this question and I've heard names I don't even know.
Yeah.
But this is great because it's like then I can go Google that person and be like, yo, whoa, all right, okay, all right. So it could be a learning experience for somebody.
Yeah, like I know a lot of the best MCs I've ever heard are people you've never heard of, freestyling with them for hours in an apartment, and nobody will ever hear what I heard. But I'm like,
that's good.
I'm just like, yeah, like I've never heard anybody like my boy Reason in Grand Junction. Me and that cat used to freestyle for hours. We pull out the dictionary, just like it was just a brain. It was insane.
Yeah.
And you start getting like these like chills in your brain. Like you start like I don't know. Another homie of mine, Dr. Ossify. I've been listening to Dr. Ossify for years. He's not known, but like the dope thing about him is like that cat his music, like I can listen to it for years and I don't get tired of it. It's really strange. It's like it's
Dr. Ossify?
Dr. Ossify.
How do you spell that?
Doctor, of course, and then Ossify. Yeah, he's one of my favorite artists musically. But he's not on TV. Or Googling him probably wouldn't get much results. But,
really?
Yeah, but he's insane.
All right.
But as far as like the most famous, like I've always liked KRS-One. I think his best years of like as far as like production selection are behind him. He's kind of lost his way in that regard, honestly. Like a lot of times he wraps up beats. I'm just like, dude, what are you picking this beat for? Skill-wise, Eminem's super talented, but I think Eminem is like spiritually he hit like a growth stunt in his 20s, and he can't move past his ego. Because like to me, like a vocalist or not just a rapper, anybody that's like you don't want to hear just somebody speaking to you from their point of view of just their ego. If that's all I'm hearing from you, it's like I just eventually repel it. Okay. And that doesn't mean that I don't think you're good.
Right.
It's just like I think with the true, like you get true gold with lyricism if your soul's in it, and maybe a touch your ego, so you have that confidence or whatever. But like true art comes from the soul. And if your art ain't coming from the soul and sometimes from a humble place or from a vulnerable place, or just like I've made music from the point of view of my ego, and I've also made music where I felt God there or something, and it wasn't even, I felt like it wasn't my ego talking, it was just like I felt blessed to even be an instrument of saying these things.
Yeah.
One time I felt that type of feeling was I made a song called God's Hands for my cousin who died, and I never felt that we were recording a song. It came so natural to me. I didn't have to go to a studio or think about it. I just had a microphone in my living room and I just recorded this song, and to this day, like people in my family, I still get messages about that song. And I also have songs that are probably maybe some people might think are better. That was one of the only times I felt like skill meet spirit perfectly blended, and then
like a synergy.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
And that's
did you write that song quickly?
Yeah.
Isn't it weird how sometimes it's like when you let go, you're able to let go. It's like it just comes so easy, and and then sometimes you're sitting there racking your brain over something, and you spend too much time on it. At the end, you're like, that was,
and a lot of times,
not my best work.
Yeah, and a lot of time MCs or artists, they get too much in the competitive side of it and think, oh, like, are other MCs going to be impressed by my punchlines and my wordplay? And when you do that, next thing you know, you just end up trying to say too much, and it might take away from the human element of just being relatable.
That's kind of what I think about that too a lot. I think about intention. Like, if your intention isn't in line with anything really in your life, whether it's your art or your music or whatever your business, if your intentions aren't in line, then it just doesn't seem to ever want to work out for you. But once you let your ego go and let your intention be the guide, and you do it for the right purposes, then everything just kind of comes easy. And that's a beautiful thing. So I think that's exactly what you're talking about.
You said it better than me right there, brother, because like, if you're going to make a song with the intention of, I'm going to make it big,
right,
that song's going to probably suck.
Well, if you go by your career, I'm going to make it big, then it's probably going to suck. You know what I mean? It's really like your whole intention has to guide every move that you make. It's like you get more from giving than you do from receiving in some ways. You know what I mean? It's just the way that the universe kind of balances itself out. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. So art is a big, huge part of your life, and something that you've been able to find a way to be successful. And I know we talked a little bit earlier about, you know, the business aspect of it, but if you're, for young people, what would be your advice as far as art as a lifestyle, as a career? What would that be?
Kind of went over some of this a minute ago, but become well-rounded. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone, and put in the hours. Like, the reason people can't sometimes turn something into a job is that when something's, the main thing that a job does give people is structure, right? If you know you have to be at work at 8 a.m., and if you're not there at 8 a.m., 3 times you're fired, you're going to be there at 8 a.m. So you have to kind of crack the whip on yourself and be like, it doesn't mean you need to grind, you know? People, you hear that a lot. You got to grind, man. You got to grind. Like, I don't grind, like, but I put in my hours every day. Like, I find a way to do the art that I need to do that day. And if you're not doing it consistently, of course you're gonna not get where you want to go. So put in the time at it, and don't be afraid to fail. And if there's an artist that another thing you could do is, if there's an artist that you see doing what you're trying to do, most artists are pretty open with, especially if you're like showing them their love, like, oh, I love what you're doing, how'd you get into that? They're gonna most likely tell you.
Right.
So ask questions, like, and then just kind of start going for it. And if you need to do it as a side thing at first, just to get your footing, then do that. Like, I'm not gonna say I lucked out, but I just kind of, it was like sink or swim for me. That's why I went straight into it when I got out here. But if you need to work a side job just while you're getting by to get your footing, and then maybe go, oh, I'm starting to make some money on my gigs, and then once you start seeing this past this, as far as like, oh, the art's making more money, and then you could let the job go, and then you're good. Then you could just keep it going.
All right, cool. So what's next for you? What are you got some big plans coming up next? What's going on next? What's next for Haven?
I'm trying to do more murals, more paintings.
Big work?
Yeah, maybe. And I'm trying to go back to, like, I got some people reaching out to me from Colorado actually, and I want to go do some stuff out there that's, I want to revisit like where I'm from.
Nice.
Revisit where I'm from, and like do some work that I can be proud of, and that I can be, that I go like walk away from like, hell yeah, like I feel like I give my, like, everything I've ever built and learned, I want to put that all together in something, in maybe my hometown Pueblo, maybe something in Grand Junction, Denver.
Murals like someone just gave you a side of a building and say, hey, do something, whatever you want, do it right here. That'd
go insane. Like,
that'd be cool.
Usually when I'm doing a mural, it's a job, and they're telling me what they want, and I kind of go, okay, that's what you want, I'll do what you want. But yeah, it's good to have a little bit of free reign to take it the direction you want to go. So yeah,
let's go.
I want to do a lot of that, and I've been doing music on the back burner. It's not something I do because I'm trying to promote myself or be famous, but I'm trying to get that going more again, and I have been recording a lot with my boy AC the PD. He's the founder of Hip Hop Philosophy Records here in this neighborhood. hiphopphilosophy.com. Cool. If you want to listen to like hip hop you've never heard before, he never plays a song twice, and he has a weekly radio show on Mondays called Monday Night Fresh.
Oh, nice.
So I've been working on some stuff with him, and we're gonna put it out on wax and all that.
Cool. And that's hiphopphilosophy.com. Is that all one word?
Yep, hiphopphilosophy.com.
Spelled the way it's...
Exactly how it sounds, hiphopphilosophy.com.
Cool. If people want to get a hold of you and follow you, find out what's going on with you, how do they give us some plugs on how to get a hold of you?
If you're following, like I try to keep my music and my art separate, just because some of my music has like political content or like stuff that might ruin relationships with some of my people that follow me for my art. So my art content, you can just look up Haven AQ on any platform and you'll find me. So on Instagram at Haven AQ. And any of my music content, like on YouTube, Facebook, etc., at Solid Savage or / Solid Savage.
Okay. Did you get a new Instagram for Solid Savage? Wasn't it
Solid
Savage?
I don't promote it as much as my mainly since Instagram's visual.
Okay.
I do a lot of my art promotion on there, but my music Instagram is the Solid Savage.
Okay.
Because some terrible rapper has Solid Savage taken, and he doesn't even use the page.
Oh man.
I tried to message him. I said, "Could I get that name from you? Because that's me."
Well, he hasn't even logged in for so long. Maybe he went to jail.
I don't think he's. Yeah.
All right. So, well, Haven, it's been awesome coming down here and meeting with you. I'd like to follow you down to your studio and come check out some of your art pieces, and we'll get some footage of that. But, big brother, it's been awesome. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming out and talking, man. All good.
Thank you,
Yes.
Yeah. Seeing my art is going to be a better way to understand what I'm about than me talking about it.
Beautiful.
Talking about any of it, because pictures worth 1,000 words.